button.
Thanks for joining. We'll just give people a few minutes to jump on the webinar and then we'll kick off. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us. Today we have a webinar presentation between AWS and Sumo Logic on DevSecOps, so Amazon EKS and Sumo Logic. Presenting today, my name is Eddie Thompson. I am lead solution engineer here at Sumo Logic for APAC. And joining me, I have Sneh, who I will let introduce himself now.
Yeah, my name is Snehanshu Pesare. You can call me Sneh. I'm AWS Partner Solution Architect based in Auckland, New Zealand.
Thanks, Sneh. Yeah, so we're going to run through some a few slides, a bit of content, and give you a bit of a grounding in what we do here. And at the end, we'll get you to log into a lab environment, and we can run through a couple of labs and have a bit of hands-on stuff for what we've been talking about as well. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a bit about Kubernetes and EKS and some security challenges around both of those and how we can solve some of them with Sumo. And then at the end, a bit of time for Q&A as well. But to start with, I'll hand over to Sneh, and he can run you through a bit about Kubernetes and EKS.
Awesome. Thank you, Eddie. So as Eddie said, that we are going to talk about the Sumo Logic and the Amazon EKS integration. So for the one who is not too familiar with the EKS, EKS stands for Amazon's Elastic Kubernetes Service. So before we dive deep into the solution, I would like to give a quick overview of Kubernetes and where AWS fits into the picture along with the Sumo Logic. So let's start with the Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is an open source container management or orchestration platform, meaning it deploys, manages, and maintains your containers using the single control plane. Number one reason that we are hearing from our customers choosing Kubernetes is the ability to deploy and ship the code faster. So how does it do that? At a very high level, 10,000 feet view, it provides through an abstraction layer created on the top of the group of the host, which helps development team to let the Kubernetes manage the function of the host, including the load balancing, monitoring, controlling the resource consumption by the teams or an application, limiting the resource consumptions, and much more. Next slide. So Kubernetes does many things, including simplifying the deployment of management of the containerized application. And it is backed by the Cloud Native Cloud Foundation, CNCF. Kubernetes allows you to configure and run the containerized application and at a production scale and integrates a driver to configure the networking and storage for your application. I have seen many teams using the Kubernetes for its vibrant ecosystem and the community and a consistent open source APIs and the broad flexibility. However, Kubernetes at a scale is really hard. Running containers at the production scale is complicated and requires trained resources who spend significant portion of their time managing the upgrades, monitoring and scaling the control plane, deploying and managing the life cycle of the operation software and much more. In addition, operation team needs to ensure that their workload are deployed in a secure manner without exposure to the known or unknown security vulnerabilities. This also increases the operational overhead of the running Kubernetes on your own. And if you notice, all of this effort does not really move your business forward. Our customers want to focus on the application and ideas that would allow them to deliver the new products to their end users. And this is why a lot of our customers have come to rely on the Amazon to handle the undifferentiated heavy lifting of the security and operating the Kubernetes at scale. Next slide. Thank you. So which underlying cloud platform to choose? Because we know AWS is backed by the low latency, highly available, redundant infrastructure with the multiple availability zones within them. The quality of the underlying cloud platform does really matter because the speed, stability, scalability, and the integration with the platform, it all impacts the quality of the application that you are going to build into AWS and how much work you will have to do it yourself. And ultimately, how happy your customers will be. Your customers perceive the performance of your application based on how quickly the new features are introduced and whether your app was down when they needed it the most. And ultimately, the cloud platform matters because at the end of a day, you and your customers would be using the same compute infrastructure. Next. So today, based on CNCF, which is the Cloud Native Cloud Foundation study, 65% of the organization choose AWS to run their containerized application. So why do they really choosing AWS for running their EKS? Number one reason, through AWS EKS, normally the conversion steps are done for you, like creation of the Kubernetes master cluster, configuring the service discovery, Kubernetes primitive and networking, etc. Second reason, the Kubernetes control plane, including the backend persistent layer and the API servers, is provisioned and scaled across the various availability zones, which results into the high availability, and it also eliminates the single point of a failure. Third reason, organization also chooses the EKS to run onto the Fargate. So the one who haven't heard Fargate is a serverless compute engine for the containers. With the Fargate, you no longer need to provision and manage the servers. It's a serverless platform. And the organizations can specify and pay for the resources per application. Fourth reason, and of course, as a part of the AWS landscape, EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, is integrated with the various AWS services, which makes it easy for the organizations to scale and secure the applications seamlessly. From AWS identity management perspective for the authentication or Elastic load balancing for the load distribution, the straightforwardness and the convenience factor of using EKS just can't be understated. Next slide. We are going to talk a little bit about the shared responsibility model. So talking about it, generally speaking, AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, whereas you as a customer are responsible for security in the cloud. With EKS, AWS is responsible for managing the security of the EKS Kubernetes control plane, which includes the Kubernetes master, etcd, which is the backend store for all of your cluster data. And you are largely responsible for the topics which are actually mentioned into this slide. For example, IAM, pod security, runtime security, network security, and so forth. And when it comes to the infrastructure security, AWS will assume the additional responsibility as you move from the self-managed workers to managed node groups to Fargate. For example, with the Fargate, which is the serverless compute, AWS becomes more responsible for securing the underlying instances and runtime, which is used to run your pod so that you can focus on your business objective. And we at AWS do the undifferentiated heavy lifting. Next, I will give a high-level overview of the integration between the EKS and Sumo Logic, and then AD will go further into the details of how the integration actually works. So there are two main things. Number one is a control plane, and number two is the worker nodes. Talking about the worker nodes, Sumo Logic, leveraging open source technologies like Helm, Fluent, Bit, Prometheus to push the logs and the metrics to Sumo Logic. And for control plane logs, Amazon EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service logging, provides the audit and the diagnostic log from EKS control plane to CloudWatch log in your account. And then these logs are forwarded to the Sumo Logic via the Lambda function. And to set up the EKS control plane collection, there are few steps that we are going to follow in this workshop today, and it has been mentioned into the Sumo Logic documentation as well. Once you have configured the collection of the logs, Sumo Logic app for the EKS can be installed and the alert can be configured. AD is going to dive deeper later in this workshop today, but that being said, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. I'll be there throughout the workshop. With that being said, over to you, Eddie.
Thanks very much, Snow. Yeah, so that was a really great introduction about EKS and Kubernetes, and yeah, I'm going to drill a little bit more into the Sumo Logic side of things here. So, as Snow mentioned, we've got a completely open source and completely open collection strategy for Kubernetes and for EKS. So basically everything that we use here are Cloud Native Computing Foundation governed projects. So Kubernetes itself is a Cloud Native Computing Foundation governed project, but we use things like FluentBit as a daemon set which collects all of the logs. We use FluentD. We've written a plugin for that for Kubernetes to grab all the security events. We use Prometheus for auto discovery and the metrics. OpenTelemetry is there to collect traces, and Falco is an open source kernel level anomaly detection module that we use to provide enhanced security context for your Kubernetes clusters as well. Now, when all of this data is collected, it gets forwarded into Sumo's enrichment pipeline. And the important thing here is that we stamp all of the metadata with service, deployment, namespace, in addition to sort of the traditional infrastructure, things like node and pod and container, which makes it really easy to identify the different services and different deployments and be able to sort of slice and dice that data in a few different ways within Sumo. So we'll talk a little bit about DevSecOps, and that may be a term that's familiar to you, may not be. You've likely heard of DevOps before. That's a fairly sort of common one that people are used to hearing, and DevSecOps is merely an evolution of that. So that's sort of how we're bringing security out of a separate silo into part of our day-to-day operational work. So we're bringing that closer to our standard sort of development and release cycles, because once upon a time, security may have been treated as something off to the side, but today it's more important than ever, and it's something that people are really wanting to have as a core component of their business, as a core component of their development organizations. It's not something that's left to later to run through a review and that's when it gets done. It really needs to be part of how we conduct our day-to-day operations. So that's sort of what we mean when we talk about DevSecOps. So where does Kubernetes need help when it comes to security? So Kubernetes handles the infrastructure, so it's there to give you desired state management for your applications and scale your infrastructure for you dynamically. So you can tell it what you want it to do, but it is not an analysis tool. It's not something which is going to give you insight into potential breaches. It's not going to allow you to investigate past events, and it's not going to allow you to audit and interpret logs and metrics for security purposes. And that's where you need to look at the relevant tooling to make that happen for you. And that's sort of what we can help provide with Sumo. So there's some unique challenges, some unique security challenges for Kubernetes, and things like pod and network security policies. Excuse me. So security policies are provided, but not specifically enabled. So depending on how things have been configured, you can have a mismatch within your deployment. Things might not be customized to your specific needs, and you might need some configuration work to have things up to a specific standard. And it can be hard to sort of be sure of how that's actually configured. Host security. So if you've got strong hosting support such as AWS and EKS, you're getting a long way there to actually take away a lot of that sort of security burden that can occur there. If you're actually running your own nodes, then having things like SE Linux, so Security Enhanced Linux, or AppArmor enabled on your EC2 hosts is really important. The other thing is the Kubernetes API. So that's sort of the API is really sort of the keys to your kingdom when it comes to Kubernetes. So making sure that you are following good RBAC principles. You're not creating really broad security role policies for applications and users and roles that don't require it. You're using sensible principles of least privilege. And that control plane, that API, that control plane data, that's something which is logged via EKS, and it's something that we can use the tooling to monitor and to audit that API activity with Sumo. So one of the things that makes life a bit easier is our Kubernetes solution has auto discovery. So one of the big things with Kubernetes is ephemerality. Pods come and go. Deployments have relatively short life cycles compared to older sort of server style life cycles. Nodes may be ramped up and added to the cluster as capacity is required, and then removed from the cluster as they scale down. So things do not have fixed life cycles, so being able to always auto discover what is there now and have a clear state of what is active in your current cluster is really, really important. But the other thing here is being able to also see retrospectively to investigate security events and know that you have that sort of fixed record of the historical and audit data when you need it as well. So we're making sure that security is a core part of that solution. So when you install Sumo, Falco is there as an additional extra. It's something that you can enable, you do not have to. And the same way that the CloudWatch audit logs are there as something you can additionally pull in. We really recommend doing it because it provides you a much greater richness to your security and audit posture. But some people say, hey, that's not for me. But we do really recommend that you have that stuff there because, as we mentioned before, DevSecOps, it's not something that security is not something that we can sort of have living off to the side anymore. It's something that is a day-to-day responsibility for all of us as IT and computing professionals. Everyone's a security professional now, it seems. But so when we have things like Falco installed, we're able to see things like the base rule set. Now, this is configurable, but the base rule set gives you some useful things out of the box and see which rules are being triggered by specific users, which processes, which pods, what are the priorities of these being triggered. So if I've got a bunch of debug and info things going on, probably not a real issue. If I'm seeing a whole bunch of priority things and they're coming from my root user, then I might be a little bit more concerned. These are things that I can use for general sort of reporting and analysis, but it's also things that I can use for real-time alerting and security monitoring as well. So when we're talking about DevSecOps and the Sumo platform, we have our core Kubernetes platform, which is mostly revolving around troubleshooting. But for true DevSecOps, we absolutely recommend adding our control plane apps, and in this case for Amazon AKS, because it gives you that visibility and operational insight into what's happening in that AKS control plane. Now, Amazon is managing that control plane for you, making sure it's highly available, but having the visibility into what's going on with that API server access and audit, who is doing what, is really, really important for the security side of things. So I've been talking for a while now, and it's always a bit more fun if we can get our hands dirty, so to speak. So we will jump into some labs and we can have a look at how some of these dashboards actually look in the product. So we are going to log into the training environment. Logging into the training environment. So basically, I think Suresh will paste the details into the chat. But if you go to open up your browser and go to service.sumologic.com, and then we're going to log in. Now, for the email, training plus analyst, then I'll get you to choose a 3-digit number anywhere between 001 and 999. So for example, training plus analyst 057 at sumologic.com. And when you've chosen a number, please drop the number into the chat so other people can see which numbers have already been used. So once you've chosen a number, so training plus analyst and 3 digits at sumologic.com, the password will be security22 exclamation mark. So that's security with a capital S, 22 exclamation mark. And you can log in and then you should see something like, well, you'll see something like this. Okay. Now, Kubernetes has already been installed in the training lab environment. We already have data flowing in. If you wish to install Kubernetes in your own Sumo environment, there is a self-paced course called for Kubernetes Helm installation that you can run through. You can find these anywhere within our Learn and certification. So you can go to get certified. And you can find all of our various training courses here. So what do we have there? Kubernetes. Yep, so there's a Kubernetes one there. And we have various things for learning our skills and things within the training portal there. But today, what we're going to do once logged in is install an app. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my personal folder and see if the app's there. And if it's not, I'm going to install it. So let's have a look here. If I go over to my personal folder, which is here. So I've clicked on the nav bar on the left, opening up my personal folder, and I can't see that in there, so we can install an application. So to do that, I'm going to click on App Catalog. And this shows me all of the applications that I can install now. Applications in this case are collections of dashboards, collections of searches and reports that you can use. So in this case, I'm going to go down to Kubernetes. You could just type EKS here, but I'll click on Kubernetes so you can see a few of the other things that are going on. And here I can see I have my Amazon EKS control plane app. So I can click on that. And you can see here it shows me a few different previews of what I'm going to get before I start. So if this is you going to install this in your own environment, it gives you some information on what you actually need to do to make sure you've got your data going in there. But I can click on Add Integration because I know I've already got the data coming in this environment. So it's letting me know to run through the setup docs, but I've already got the data in, so I'm going to click Next. And so for the log source, I'm going to put this in my personal folder, and I'm going to call it Amazon EKS control plane. I'll leave that as the default name there. And for the data, we're going to use labs/Kubernetes v2/EKS. So this should autocomplete for me, but labs/Kubernetes v2. Whoops. Can't type today. EKS. I think that was right. Labs/Kubernetes v2/EKS. So once I've got that in there, and I've selected my personal folder, I can click Next. Okay, so we can open one of the dashboards below. So it shows me the dashboards there. I can go to my content library. So we're going to open the folder here. So we can see Amazon EKS control plane, and it drops me down and shows me the dashboards that I have here. And so let's have a look at the API server audit dashboard. And we can see a few different things here. So how many non-200 HTTP status codes we've had in the last 15 minutes. What's our failure rate on the API server? Which are our top 10 URLs which have got problems with their status codes? Which users have had the most failures? Which URLs are we seeing that have the most non-200 responses? Where are we seeing failures by reason and by namespace? And who are our most active users? So each request can be recorded with an associated stage. So request received, response started, response complete, and panic. Lets you know what the known audit levels are. And we can see the volume of requests via the specific policy and requests by the specific stages as well. So one of the things that's important here, particularly when we're looking at things like status code trends, and so this is only the last 15 minutes, but when I'm looking at a dashboard like this, I want to see what is my trend. Is something trending up or down? Is it trending higher? If it's trending higher, what is trending higher and why? And then I might want to have a look at the distribution. So is it coming from a wide range of things, or do I have one specific component which is misconfigured? Or do I have a particular user or namespace which is misconfigured, which is showing me the bulk of my errors and why this may be happening. But we can also see things like what's going on with the API server in general. So what are my success and failure rates? Where is it happening by clients? What are my severity breakdowns? And where am I seeing specific error logs from as well? So now we're going to, we've just been looking at a dashboard directly, but one of the really powerful features for Sumo and Kubernetes is the Sumo Explore view. So we're going to use that to then investigate a security dashboard within Sumo. So I'm going to click on New, go down to Explore, and it opens up an Explore window. So I might drop this down to Kubernetes node view, and I can look at a cluster, and I can see here that I have some various AWS EC2 nodes running in my cluster. Now, this gives me some useful information, but this is sort of infrastructure type metrics. So CPU, memory usage, how many CPUs have I got? What's my total memory? Where am I seeing memory usage for particular pods? How much memory am I using across my cluster? That sort of thing. Or I might want to be able to drop down to a specific node and see what the resource data is for that node at the time. But what we're interested in here today on the security side, so we can actually have a look for the various dashboards which are configured, which match up with useful things for a cluster. So in this instance, I'm going down to the Kubernetes security audit events. No, actually, I might go security overview. I think that was the one we were looking for, was it? Let's have a look. Yep, so we're going to select the security overview from the drop down. And so I can see here this particular cluster, and this is data which is being collected via Falco. So that's the kernel level anomaly detection tool. So that's something which was open sourced by Sysdig, and that actually gets some really deep information of what's actually going on within the Kubernetes cluster at the sort of at the kernel level, and has a bunch of sort of pre-configured rules out of the box which are relevant to Kubernetes, and you can add your own, but it gives you a really useful baseline. So I can see things like what my total event counts, how many emergency events, have I had some alerts, critical alerts, how many errors, how have those been tracking over time, what are my count of events over time, which actions have been triggered. So my top actions triggered are read sensitive file, spawn shell, network activity. And I can see these, the distribution of my top 10 sort of rules which have been triggered as well. So things like cluster role created, creating a privileged pod attached to the cluster admin role, pod created in kube namespace, a service account that's been created, or a namespace has been deleted, cluster role with a wildcard created. So you can see these are sort of things which in some cases may have valid use cases, but also if you've got a fairly sort of steady state configuration, if you're seeing some of these things being created, that is definitely something that may need to be investigated, which may be an indication of compromise in your environment. So we can also see some things like distribution. So rules triggered by specific users. So is it coming in from root or cops or another user? What are the priorities of my rules? So seeing quite a lot of warnings, some info, but not too many not too many emergency type ones, so which is good. Which processes are triggering my rules? Which parent processes are triggering the rules? And which particular pods are triggering those rules? So that's sort of where we're seeing things from the security overview, but we can also then get down into more specifics on which actual rules have been triggered as well. So you can see these are the actual events which have been triggered from the rules, and you can see the output of those particular ones there. But rolling them up into sort of general categories, you can see things like non-sudo set UIDs, right below etc, right below binary directories, run shell untrusted, modified binary directories, system user interactives. These are things which are being monitored live and consistently. These are things which you have here in a dashboard for visibility and audit, but also the ability to really easily add those to a monitor and an alert if these are something which you wish to have pop you a notification into Slack or an email or into your SIEM events as well. Now, you can also see here security audit events. So these are looking across the audit rules which you have within your environment. So once again, some of these things which happen frequently, some of these things are common, some of these things are not so common and may be of more interest depending on how your environments are configured and how active they are. So namespace creations might be something which are relatively rare for you or really common, and so they're coming and going. Maybe something which you want to be alerted on or not. Things like creating sensitive pod mounts or cluster roles with write privileges. If you have a fairly stayed set of roles and people are creating new things like that, those can be things which you are really more interested in when they're going on. But you can also see that all of the dashboards which we had before for EKS, these are also visible within this Explore view as well. So we can tie in to the various clusters and make sure that it makes it really easy to sort of link together and explore within many clusters. So you may have multiple sort of clusters within your environment. You may have them also tagged for different things. So you might want to be able to filter between particular key value pairs. So you might have them set to different business units, and you might want to have different environments. So I only want to show me my dev environment. So I only want to show you my production. And we can sort of filter all these and create specific filters as well within this environment, which is a really handy thing to be able to do. So hopefully everyone's had a little chance there to play around with some of the dashboards and see how those can be installed in Sumo. Now, I'll open up the floor for questions. If anyone wants to type them into the Q&A or raise their hand or drop it into the chat, I'm happy to answer anything on the Sumo side, or if there's anything specific that you would like to ask about EKS, I'm sure that Snow's happy to answer those as well. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any specific questions at the moment. So I will thank you all very much for taking the time with us today to learn a bit more about, okay, how can I integrate with my current AWS to Sumo? So if you go to sumologic.com, you can sign up for a free trial. So let's just jump onto sumologic.com. You can start a free trial, and yeah, there's lots of things like AWS observability and our Kubernetes integration. All of the documentation is available there as well. So yeah, start a free trial, drop in your email and which region you're in, and yeah, you can start from there, and yeah, just we can start pulling in your data from things like CloudWatch, S3 buckets, EKS, various Amazon services. It's all really tightly integrated with AWS and easy to pull your data in there as well. And for Nan Fan, yes, I think the recording will be shared with the participants as well. So when we connect your EKS with Sumo Logic, there's a little bit of initial configuration with the Helm chart. So basically, if you have a look for Sumo Logic Kubernetes collection, I'll just drop the link for this into the chat. So you go to Sumo Logic Kubernetes collection, And you can see here, Helm, all of this gets deployed via a Helm chart. Go to the latest version, and the deployment guide runs you through the installation. This is all in the Sumo docs as well, but basically the only thing you need to sort of create is a Sumo Logic access ID and access key, and then add those in to the installation command for Helm, and all of that gets installed then. And then the only thing that needs to be installed on the Sumo side is from the app catalog. We install the Kubernetes application. So that Helm chart will configure everything that's required on your cluster from the Kubernetes side, and the rest of once that data's coming in, that'll all be available to view in the training environment. Now that training environment also will be available for you to have a play around with after the session is finished as well. But yeah, if you have any issues, please feel free to reach out to us at Sumo. Our sales team and sales engineers are here to sort of help you with that. Also, you can chat to us after the fact at our Sumo Logic Slack channel. So the other place you can go is go to slack.sumologic.com, and you can join us in our public Slack channel there if you've got some further questions as well. So data policies, if you integrate with Sumo. So Sumo has a really, really thorough secure by design setup. But if you're interested in digging more into our security attestations, you can go to our self-service portal, self-service, and I'll post this in the chat as well. And here you can request copies of things like our ISO 27001, our SOC 2 Type 2, our FedRAMP package, PCI DSS. These are all up-to-date attestations and certifications that we maintain for our platform, and give you a real level of confidence around how we manage our data security and how we manage these for our customers. Now, we're a secure by design platform. Everything is encrypted and flighted at rest. You can't pay us extra to make things more secure. Everything is done to the highest level of security for all of our customers. So there's no extra charges for encryption. There's no extra charges for PCI compliance. These are things which come as a standard part of the platform. So, do we have any other questions? Okay, looks like that's, hang on, we've got one more. Can we also track pricing on AWS and Sumo? So we do actually have a a new sort of cost explorer feature for AWS that you can use with your AWS cost data in Sumo as well. So it's a relatively new feature, but yeah, that is something that you can do as well. Probably not quite to the level of detail that you would get with something like Cloud Health, but yeah, definitely something which is there and available within the platform. Okay, I'll put out a last call for questions. So if anyone else has a question, please pop it in the chat. Yes, you can use OpenShift in Sumo. So Sumo does have a integration with OpenShift. So we have a Sumo Logic operator in the OpenShift marketplace. So you can, if you are using OpenShift as well as things like EKS, you can, yeah, it'll integrate with that as well. And the same for other Kubernetes providers. It all works with the same Helm chart and looks the same within Sumo. But there is a separate control plane app for each of the various providers. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I will thank you all very much for joining us here and look forward to hopefully you joining us in the public Slack channel for any other things that you wish to ask, and hope this has been informative for you. And if you want to try out Sumo with EKS, yeah, feel free to jump on sumologic.com and start up a free trial as well. Thank you very much for joining us today too, Snow. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.